It's impossible to gain a bunch of weight when you're keto or carnivore, right? Well, what if I told you I had talked to hundreds of women at this point who've had that experience, and I brought one of them on the show today to discuss this a little further, so stay tuned. Welcome back, my friends. My name is Sarah. I am known as Carnivore Yogi. Thank you so much for being here and clicking on today's video. Today, I have an interview with my friend who is also a quantum health coach, Kelly Bento, and we are going to talk about her experience of being on a ketogenic diet and seemingly gaining 40 pounds overnight and what she did about it. So I hope that you enjoy this episode. Please do head to the timestamps. There's going to be a ton of information down there for you guys to navigate through this episode. I am holding my baby right now, and I'm doing most of my recording at this point on Zoom because it's a little bit easier. So I hope that you'll bear with me through this time as things are a little different on my channel. I'll do a separate video to explain more. But for today, I want you to really enjoy this episode with Kelly. It's brought to you by a couple of sponsors. The first sponsor is going to be Viva Rays. These are their awesome 3-in-1 glasses. There are 3 layers here, and since I only have one hand, I can only show you this much. And essentially, they're nighttime and day lenses and their evening lenses all in one. You can use my code YOGI to save 15% at Viva Rays. And we're going to talk a ton about circadian rhythms in this episode. So if you want to protect your circadian rhythms, Viva Rays is going to be my go-to for protecting those rhythms with these amazing glasses. The second sponsor of today's episode is Optimal Carnivore. Now, I have started taking these, a little bit more of these now since I'm postpartum, getting a little bit less sleep for the time being, even though I am implementing a lot of circadian rhythm stuff with my son. He's still a newborn. So I need as much brain support as I can get right now. I absolutely love the Optimal Carnivore Brain Nourish supplement. It is brain and lion's mane combined together to give you a powerful supplement to help your brain. I don't even like to call it a supplement because it's literally just desiccated organs and some lion's mane. You can use my code carnivore, uppercase Y, to save 10% over at Optimal Carnivore. Now, I hope that you enjoyed today's episode with Kelly. Please leave us a comment. Please share this episode out if it resonates with you. And I will talk with you again soon. Thank you again so much for watching. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for coming back and tuning in. I'm really excited to have a friend of mine here today that I know she is also a quantum health practitioner. And we're going to talk about some things that I get questions about quite a bit, is how in the world do you implement these types of things when you have kids and especially teenagers? I think that that can be a very challenging age. And Kelly has had some amazing improvements with her sons. And so we just want to talk a little bit about this whole idea of quantum parenting, what that is, what that looks like. So Kelly, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me. Very excited.
Yeah, I'm excited to chat too. And I'd love to hear how you just kind of came down into this journey of understanding quantum health and circadian biology and how you got involved in that in the first place for yourself.
So my background, my education is in dental hygiene, and being a dental hygienist is very parallel to becoming an RN. So I have, a very solid science background as far as my education. And so, being in dentistry, there's a different from medicine, there's a pretty large focus on nutrition, which was wonderful. It was wonderful to have, some important education and training in proper nutrition. So, in raising my boys, I sort of had a pretty good foundation in as far as, how I wanted to raise them. And when they were, very young, my kids, I breastfed both of them until they were at least a year, which to me was important. It worked for
Yeah.
me. It was important to me. I feel, very fortunate that I was able to do that. I also, wanted to raise them and to provide them with education that sort of aligned with how I thought children should be educated. Both my boys went to a Montessori preschool, which was just an absolutely phenomenal experience for them. They had lots of outside time and lots of, just sort of self-guided exploration that I believe really set them up to succeed later on in their education. Every teacher that they've had throughout their lives has commented on their respect for learning and their curiosity, which I think was just wonderful. And I started to get very deep into health when my younger son, Cade, was about 2 years old. That's when I started down this rabbit hole. He's 17 now, so 15 years ago. And I started taking all plastic out of the house. And my husband just sort of went, okay, so we store the food in glass, right?
Yep, that's what yep.
It's the first, like that. That's like the
gateway.
Intro, right? That's as soon as the plastic goes, then crazy.
You know what's coming. The tinfoil hat is coming out.
Exactly.
Just kidding.
Exactly. So, that was the start, and also researching food and glyphosate and making sure that they were, being fed and nourished properly, sourcing food from local farms, all organic, was very important.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, with the nutrition aspect and what you do in the dental field, were you more interested in kind of a Weston A Price sort of a approach to nutrition? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So, and I mean, I'm lucky. I actually attended lots of Weston A Price, meetings and things like that. That's actually where I saw Jack Kruse speak for the first time. I was fortunate enough to be at the Nourish Vermont talks.
Oh, nice. Those are the best ones. The best ones. Yeah.
And I had my younger son with me. My son Cade went with me for the first one, and it was hysterical because we got there. He was, I believe, 12 and 10 or 12, and we got there and they were handing out blue blocking glasses. And he turned to me and he said, "You're amongst your people."
I love it.
Yeah. So, so nutrition obviously was very important in our house.
Yes.
And that's sort of around the time that I started to listen to podcasts, follow some people. Sean Croxton was probably the first health influencer that I kind of dialed into. He did happen to do an interview with Jack Kruse, and I thought he's interesting. He's interesting. And I listened, I sort of followed Jack for a while, listened to Jack for a number of years. Then I sort of, started exploring keto and Maria Emmerich and her work. And keto was amazing. I mean, for the first time in my life, I felt as though my brain turned on with including more fat in my diet, because everything had been low fat.
Yep.
And I mean, my weight, I'm fortunate. I mean, I'm petite, and my weight was never an issue. So I didn't sort of come to it from that standpoint. I came to keto from more of a cognitive standpoint.
Yes. Yeah.
And it was crazy, it was crazy what it did for me, what it did for me cognitively, but also my body completely changed. I worked out at a pretty high level. I was working out probably 5 days a week at that time. And when I went keto and I was working out and I was, fasting and all of that, I was down to, a single digit body fat, which was just insane. It was insane how thin I got. It was almost as though as the fat increased, the fat and the calories increased, I was absolutely shrinking and disappearing. My husband and I joke, we call those the Skeletor years.
Oh, wow. I had that when I was vegan. Those were my Skeletor years.
I mean, I had
Keto never did that for me. It was the vegan diet.
I had terrific, muscle. I was able to actually build muscle. I was in my mid 40s when
wow.
Yeah. It was rather crazy what it did for my body. But like I said, I went to it and explored it more from a cognitive standpoint, and it was tremendous what it did. So, keto is amazing. Keto works until it doesn't.
Yeah, agreed.
And not fully understanding, and I joke that, I was sort of keto before keto was cool. And it was amazing, but mistakes were made. I didn't understand what I understand now. And things took a dive, a really bad dive. And now looking back, I can completely understand what it was that I did and where I made the mistakes. And so, being 99 pounds certainly was way too thin, too thin. And I started to, recognize, okay, this probably, different things, amenorrhea, things like that I thought were clear signals that this just, I couldn't continue. And tried to gain weight while still being keto, couldn't. And at that time, my boys, Logan was in 8th grade. So we started talking about, okay, do we want to send them to private high school? And all throughout my life, I've always had really good sleep, really good intuitive circadian rhythm. Always went to bed early, always woke up early. That's just always what worked for me, what was very natural and comfortable for me. So as I started to explore the boys going to private school, that was, getting them into bed and late nights of researching private schools and what should we do? What's the right thing to do? So that was the only time in my life that I ever really sort of broke my circadian rhythm. And I was staying up until probably 2 a.m. on my tablet, researching, reading, pondering, sleeping later, and instantly I gained 40 pounds.
What?
And it was instant. It was instant. My thyroid tanked. Wow. My hormones tanked. I gained 40 pounds, and I was still eating the same, and I was still exercising at the same level. And
wow.
In hindsight, now I look back and I think I just completely ruined my light environment.
Yep.
And
it's insane that I have had, and if you talk about this, people will bring out the bro scientists and I get a ton of pushback. I get a ton of comments on YouTube and people messaging me on Instagram. Anytime I talk about circadian rhythms, light and health, and how you can just gain weight from changing your light environment because of how it affects the hormonal system of your body. Oh, people come out in droves to tell you that you're wrong. Yet
it's real. It's real.
I have talked with so many women that are, and it's usually in their 40s and above, you know, it's becoming younger and younger now.
Right.
The more dysfunctional things are in our society with the whole picture of health, it's younger and younger. But it's typically my women in their 40s and 50s and beyond that just wake up, you know, with this extra weight gain. And they never, ever think to correlate it with circadian health, ever. It's the last thing. It's, okay, well, I need to change my diet. I need a new exercise program. I need to, you know, do this. And it's like, what if it was a little more simple?
Right.
You know?
Right. Yeah. I tried everything. I mean, I was desperate at that time because having gone from, you know, such a lean physique,
right,
to all
and not being able to gain weight.
Right. To all of a sudden, I mean, imagine gaining, you know, going from 99 pounds to 140 pounds. You know,
that's a huge jump on a small frame.
It was unbelievable. And I kept going to my doctor saying, I don't know what's wrong. And they, you know, because I was still somewhat, you know, in shape and a normal looking weight, I certainly wasn't obese, but they thought I was completely nuts. And I kept saying, something's broken in this system. And funny enough, something in me kept saying to go back to Jack. You know, I don't know what it was. There was something in me that just kept telling me to go back into his work, to get out in nature. There was like this nagging thing in me that kept saying, go to the sheep pasture, go to the sheep pasture, which is this big open, you know, beautiful natural space near my office. And I just I went with it. And I thought, what else do I have to lose? I'm not getting any answers from my medical doctor. I'm not able to, I sort of kept experimenting, trying different things. Maybe I need more salad. Maybe I tried everything and nothing worked.
Yeah.
And so I went back to Jack and I took a very, very deep dive into all of the circadian work, and really started honoring that and you know, started in with the blue blocking glasses and being very, very mindful. Although I will say, as far as the blue blocking glasses, I had my kids wear those very early. My kids have worn those pretty much nearly their entire lives.
Wow.
Yeah. My poor kids growing up were the kids that, you know, before, you know, things like raw optics and all of these much nicer ones have come out, my kids, you know, got Swannies for Christmas.
Nice.
And they were like, oh, thanks, Mom. You know. So you know, that's sort of what really brought me very deeply into this quantum world, is that, you know, I had sort of dabbled in it, moved away from it, and then came back to it when I really needed it. And thankfully it's the real deal.
It is. And I think that it takes some, you know, for me, it was like the massive weight gain that I was like, well, how does this doesn't even make sense, you know, but now looking back, it makes perfect sense because I was wearing AirPods 24/7 and on social media all the time. And, you know, trying to get my podcast and YouTube and everything kind of up and doing well, and on technology constantly and never going outside. And then all of a sudden my body started shutting down on me. And it was like, oh, and it was you who reached out to me and was like, would you like to interview Dr. Kruse? I'm like, yeah, because
Wouldn't.
yeah, of course I would. I mean, I would love to interview him again. It's like, I had heard, like, listened to his interviews. I had just really kind of been interested in his work, but I had never really thought it could apply to me, just like, oh, this is kind of interesting. But when I actually personally talked with him, I was like, okay, it took the lid off, and I just dove right in. And yeah, and so many people I think now are open to this information that maybe they were not before, because they are experiencing things like you with this 40-pound weight gain, or autoimmune issues, or just so many health problems. The last place that they would think to look is circadian health, but they've absolutely looked everywhere else, and they're getting nowhere and spending money left and right. And this is very cheap, what we do, what we have to do.
Right. Yeah.
And even as a quantum health practitioner, we are not telling people to go out and get a bunch of testing done. There's a few things that might be able to help them, but they don't have to order $5,000 of labs and genetic testing and this, that, and the other, because they don't necessarily need to address that stuff first. Right.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I was always really curious about my labs, and, always paid very close attention to my A1C and my fasting insulin. And even, I was testing leptin years ago. And to have that, that crash happen to me, and to see what it did to my thyroid, because my thyroid was exposed to, to blue light at 2 a.m. And to see, my fasting insulin go from what was typically a 2 to an 11.
Wow.
With no change in my diet. But what really concerned me was to see my HSCRP go from a 0.5 to a 4.
Oh, wow.
That's
very problematic. Yeah.
Very inflammatory. And I just, immediately was like, something isn't right. I need to course correct quickly. Thankfully, with all of Jack's work that's out there and readily available, and I was able to do that. So my kids have grown up, I think, with Jack's voice constantly in the background, listening to podcasts out by the pool, where I, sort of have a podcast running, just constantly. So I swear, I think it's because of that, because of, just really exploring all of this information, that I feel like that's what kind of prompted my oldest Logan to have such a terrific understanding of the science of all of this, of mitochondrial health and such.
Yeah. And you've, so I want to talk about that, but I also want to jump back to your story. What kind of course of action? Because I know I've got a lot of female listeners probably in this situation that may just be in this stuck place. What was the kind of course of action that you took when you started making changes?
Immediately, it was non-negotiable to get AM sunlight, to be out at sunrise every day. Not just waking up at that time, but being outside at that time every day. And then, from there, just making the conscious decision, the educated decision, to make sure that I was spending every afternoon, every lunch hour outside, and also being extremely mindful of my light environment at night. And
Yeah, I
as
think that's a huge one.
Yeah, as I did those things, and those are free,
Yep.
Free,
Yep.
free, easy.
Yep.
As I started to do those things, things, started to come around.
Yep.
I did also start more into that's when I really explored carnivore at that time as well. And so I think that really helped to sort of course correct some of what was happening. It definitely was more so the light environment.
Yep.
And then, adding in that food component of carnivore that I think really just got me back to myself, essentially.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it can be such a great reset and just bring your body back. I haven't been doing it during pregnancy really, but I definitely plan on, because we're going to hit up winter very soon here. And I'm kind of like, all right, I've got all my broths stocked up, got the meat freezer full.
Right.
Got all the fats and everything ready to go. Cause it really does help to bring the body back, I think, to homeostasis when combined with light.
Carnivore alone wouldn't have done it. I
No.
know that carnivore alone would not have done it, because I was fully keto. I mean, I was very close to carnivore even at that time. And just understanding that it wasn't about the food.
Right.
It wasn't about the food. It was about my light environment.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's a hard one for people to come to, but I could say I have had hundreds of women, if not maybe to 1,000 at this point over the last 4 years, that have contacted me and they're doing keto or carnivore perfectly. And I don't like to call people liars and say, no, you're cheating. You're stuffing in the candy. That's the problem. You're cheating. Right. You're just not telling me. I like to give people the benefit of the doubt. Maybe there's a percentage of those people that are telling me they're doing it perfectly and they might not be, but I think a lot of those people were honest, being honest, and they're at this place of desperation, because I can tell when they've gotten to that desperation place. And same situation, 30, 40 pounds, and I know there because I was there. And I think you were probably one of the people that followed me on Instagram, and I think you were the one who sent me a message about the AirPods, and I got mad. I don't know if you were one of the people, because I used to wear them constantly in my stories, and you were like, you probably don't want to do that. You might want to reconsider those. It took me really talking with Dr. Gesvini, with Corey.
Love him.
And I do too. It just really I think it took that connecting with Corey where he's just like, what the hell would you do that? And him explaining it to me. And I'm like, oh, that's probably not good. Okay. Won't do that anymore. And then, 30 pounds just kind of came off, and people are like, oh, that's BS, but it really was as simple as light environment, and understanding that non-native EMF is a part of your light environment as well.
Right.
And I think that's another hard one for people to get to as well. But it's just because you can't see it, it doesn't mean it's not there. It definitely is, and it's affecting us.
Yeah.
I hope that you're enjoying today's episode with my friend, Kelly Bento. Just a quick little reminder to head down to those show notes to check out the timestamps. If there's any part of this episode you want to listen to again, make sure you hit that like button and share this video with anyone who you feel could be helped. I feel like this information Kelly and I talk about is very not accepted widely by a lot of people in the carnivore and keto community. And I want to keep spreading this message as much as I can, because there are so many people that are struggling with this excess weight gain and just feeling confused. They're trying to change things with the diet, trying to work harder, fast more, and this is another avenue that you can go down instead of just working yourself to death. So a quick little shout out to one more sponsor, Upgraded Formulas. Now, this is their magnesium, which I absolutely love and is very helpful if you have issues with sleeping, but I'm a bigger fan of their hair tissue mineral analysis with a consultation for getting to the bottom of any mineral imbalances that you might be experiencing. You can use my code YOGI12 or YOGI to save over at Upgraded Formulas. So make sure to check them out. Again, if you have any kind of fatigue issues, muscle cramps, any sort of thing that feels just like a mineral imbalance, it's better to test it than go out and just buy a bunch of exogenous supplements. You don't know if those are actually going to be helpful for you. So again, thank you to Upgraded Formulas. My code there is either Yogi or Yogi12. And also, as a thank you for listening to the show, you can use my code podcast to save 10% on all my courses, which are linked down in the show notes as well. And they are all centered around circadian health, which is what we are talking about in today's episode. Speaking of which, let's get back to it.
I did an interesting experiment years ago when I was wearing my Oura ring, which I do go back to on occasion as I'm trying to, dial things in. It's a good tool, certainly.
It is.
And so I had actually the first iteration of the Oura, so probably many years ago.
I got one of the first ones too. I think I still have it somewhere.
Yeah, the big one.
Yeah.
And I remember starting to shut down the Wi-Fi at night because our router is simply on a switch. And starting to shut it down and noticing immediately that my deep sleep doubled. And I was like, that's interesting. And so, my husband said, well, that's placebo because you believe it to be working. So, and I said, okay, I typically go up to bed earlier than anyone. And I said, I go up to bed before you do. So what I want you to do is you either shut down the Wi-Fi or don't shut it down. And I'll see.
You won't know.
Right. Exactly. Like my double blind placebo, whatever, study. And sure enough, I was able to 100% say, okay, yes, this night you shut it down. This night you didn't. This night you did. So I had the data. I sort of played around with it and recognized what the Wi-Fi being on at night was doing to my sleep.
Yeah, it's wild how I think I'm one of those people that I have to detox from it for a while before I can tell a difference. I just talked with August, who owns Tech Wellness. I had her on, and she was saying, she's someone who, if there's Wi-Fi on, she'll just immediately get a headache. She knows, like, her body will she's like, oh, there's a router somewhere nearby. I've never been, and my daughter's that way too. I've never been that way, but if you detox me from it, if I get away from it and then you expose it to me, I'm like, oh, I feel that. Like, so I think we all have varying degrees of awareness around these things, but it affects us even if you don't have that awareness. It's just maybe like a low-lying assault that's happening to your body, and you're just so used to it that you don't even correlate, brain fog or not getting quite as good of sleep or you don't really think about that it could be affecting you in that way. Right. Yeah.
It's interesting when I mention to people to shut down their Wi-Fi, and you get these looks like, what could that possibly have to do with anything?
Right.
And some people are open to discussing it. I certainly always add that in to the conversation. But yeah, that's definitely one of the biggest barriers when I talk to people. But I know from my own experience, and I know from what the difference that I see in my kids
Mm-hmm.
compared to their peers and the things that their peers are struggling with. And
Yeah.
I mean, I'm so thankful as a mother to have been open to this and to have had access to this information that, you know, I feel like there's clearly nothing more important than your kids' health.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, you know, to really truly believe and trust that my husband and I have done right by them.
Yeah.
It's, you know, it just brings me great comfort as a parent to know, like, I'm doing absolutely everything that I can to give my children the best possible life and health and, you know, physical and mental health that's possible.
And that's definitely one of the reasons I just wanted to bring you on to talk, is because I'm in a lot of kind of like, you know, crunchy mom groups, and, you know, a lot of these women, I feel that they have the same intentions that you just mentioned, as I do as well. And they are not having the plastic in the house. They're not having the foods with the glyphosate. They're doing their best to get all these things out, detoxify, be all natural, yada, yada. But they're walking around with an Apple Watch and AirPods and letting their kids play on an iPad or play on their phone, play games, and you know, the light bulbs in the home and all these other. So this is like, okay, we can do the food, we can do the plastic and you know, but this over here, I don't know how to approach this with my kids, with my family. And I don't even know that it's substantiated. I don't even know that it's a real thing. And that's kind of where, you know, the quote unquote crunchy mom community is at this point in time, which is crazy to me because it's, you know, 2022. And we've learned a lot in the last, you know, couple years, especially. But this whole thing about, you know, quantum health is still, you know, it's not widely accepted. And so just to maybe talk to some of those moms, you know, that they do want to do the best thing by their kids, maybe we could just review some things that maybe they could start doing that are easy that you did with your kids, and then how you got compliance. Like, I know that you coach women who have small children and they have children in how to do these things. So yeah, let's talk about that a little bit.
So, I mean, my kids, I always joke that my kids essentially spent their entire childhood barefoot and naked. You know, my sister would come over.
The way to do it.
Exactly, right? My sister, and I don't even know why I did that. It was like, whatever, you know?
Right. Yeah.
My husband's family is Portuguese, and you know, so my kids were just like these little brown little boys, you know, running around. And they loved to be naked outside. So I went with it.
Yeah.
And, you know, my sister would come over and she'd say, "Why are your kids always naked?" Well, I would joke and I'd say, "Well, they're European." So, you know, I just let them be kids and be outside and be naked and be barefoot. And, you know, it worked for them. I mean, now I understand really how important that was. If I had it, you know, to do over, I would let them be naked and barefoot even more. You know, but, you know, like I said, my kids have had the blue blocking glasses most of their lives. I mean, most of their lives. And also, as my kids were growing up, video games, television, things like that. I mean, we live in a great neighborhood, tons of kids, mostly boys. So, they were always outside, always playing. There was always some sort of a sports game happening. And I have always loved being in the sun. I've loved it. My entire life, I would tell everyone that I was solar powered. I need to be outside. I'm solar powered. And now I know,
you
I
are.
am. I truly am.
Yes.
So, so for us, we were outside a lot when they were kids, when they were little, and video games, my kids weren't exposed to them until, probably those middle school years. I mean, elementary school, like second, third grade kind of thing. Yes. But we had very strict rules in this house that they could not game during the week, and they could only game Saturday and Sunday mornings until noon. That was it. And we never broke that rule. They also were not allowed to video game during the summer or during school vacations. So it was never, in this house, it was never this sort of free for all that they were just, allowed to have access to that kind of stuff, unlimited. We kept a very tight rein. And I remember all of their friends' parents saying to me, like, how do you do that? How do you do that?
Yep.
Oh, what do you mean? It's my job.
Right.
And I take it seriously.
Yeah.
So, we kept a pretty tight rein on that as they were growing up. My boys didn't get a cell phone until they were in high school.
Wow.
Yeah. And even with that, there would be times that I would sort of just go and say, you know what, you need to put the phone away for a couple of weeks. Like, let me hold on to it for a couple of weeks. And I would, so, for any parent out there, I'm not going to say it's easy. It's not.
Yeah.
But it's important. Your kid's mental and physical health is vitally important. And, when they were toddlers, we were constantly hovering over them, making sure that they didn't touch the stove and they didn't, bonk their head on a coffee table corner. Well, you're still on duty, right?
Yeah.
Just because they're older, it doesn't mean that you get a pass. Like, you still have to be on duty. And I still, in this house, every night, after the sun sets, I'm still like roaming through the house, like, shut off the lights,
turning the lights off. Oh, I drive my family insane with the lights.
Shut off the lights, shut off,
I'm always turning off lights, even in the daytime.
Yeah. Oh,
Like, there's no lights on in here, and I've got my window open in front of me because my patio we were getting something done in the driveway and it was too loud. So I'm like, oh, this is plan B. You just, like, I'm like the light police in my house and turning everyone's phone screen red and just being the weird mom. But I think that, with my daughter, and I'm sure you've done this with your sons, it definitely sounds like you have with my daughter, what's important, even though she is autistic, even though she, is profoundly different than her peers. If I talk to her and I explain things to her, she's like, okay. I'm like, this is why mommy has to turn your screen red. This is why we have to stop using the devices. This is why it's on airplane mode. This, like, you explain it. And I think that they, as look to you as an authority, as a guide. Your kids are looking to you constantly as a guide and to set these boundaries and guidelines. But if you explain, I think that quantum physics and the science is pretty interesting. I'm, as an adult, very interested by it. And I don't think that they're getting taught these sorts of things in school, obviously. And so I think it can be a really interesting thing for them to learn about and to say, oh, I could, have better brain function. I could be happier, less depressed. I could have all of these benefits if I listen to mom and kind of do some of the weird stuff, quote unquote, weird,
Right.
that she's saying to do. And so, with your kids, how is that kind of gone? You mentioned your son Logan really enjoying to understanding quantum physics. How do you approach
Right.
that with them?
That same way. I mean,
Yeah.
I've never sort of, toned down the information. I've just
Mm-hmm.
like provide them the information, which is, which is understandable, so that they know the why behind
Mm-hmm.
the things that we do.
Yeah.
And yeah, Logan just has he's studying bioengineering at UMass, and so
Wow.
yeah, he's a bright kid, and he's having a wonderful experience with college, and he gets it. He really gets it, and that's basically how I've presented this information. Not that do it because I said so.
Mm-hmm.
This is why we're doing this.
Right.
These are the reasons why we're doing this.
Yeah.
We were up in Maine. We go up to my dad's house on the lake every summer. And over the past few years, we take an entire carload full of boys, teenage boys, and we're up there a couple of years ago. And one of Logan's friends, the first day we were there, he had sunglasses on all day, and I didn't say anything.
You
Yeah.
didn't.
And the next day, he was very sunburned. And I just said to him, do you understand why you got sunburned yesterday? And he said, well, yeah, I forgot my sunblock. And I said, no, actually, there's a much more interesting reason. And I explained to him about the sunglasses and exactly what that did. And I said, you essentially, you're, getting a tan, melanin in your skin is what, protects you. And I said, you sort of block that natural signal from the sun when you're in a strong UV. And I said, you basically, left yourself vulnerable. And he just looked at me and he said, well, that makes sense.
Wow.
And I said, yeah, it does. And I never saw him with the sunglasses on again.
Wow.
So, I try to present the information to them, the science to
Right.
them.
Right.
And I find I get far more acceptance of things when I do that, rather than just saying, listen, I want you off your phone.
Right.
I can explain the reasons why I want them off their phone. I can explain the
Right.
reasons why I want them eating sardines and salmon.
Yeah.
And they're much more accepting of it. And my son Cade, a friend had given him a VR headset.
Oh dear.
I certainly would never buy anything like that,
No.
but a friend had given him a VR headset, and it was upstairs. And I said to him, you are not to touch that. You're not to touch that. And he had some other friends over one day, and they were all like, they all call me Kel. Hey, Kel. And they're all like, Kel, why can't he use the VR headset? We all have them and they're super fun. And I grabbed my meter, my tri-field meter. And I said, let me show you something. And I took out the tri-field meter, and that thing was screaming with that VR headset, screaming.
Wow.
And they were all like wide-eyed, like, what does that mean? And
it's not good.
Right. So, I explained to them what it meant, and they were all like, wow. So, just explaining things to them.
Yeah.
They're not going to know quantum biology and quantum physics and the ramifications of things that they do. But when you explain it to them, they get it. They get it. And I feel like they're open to it. And I'm to the point, so when kids come in my house, I have, let me just show you. I go on Amazon and I buy boxes of these. I buy like 12 to a box of these red lens glasses. And I keep them at the house, and basically every kid that comes over here, as they sort of get to know me, get to know us as a family and the things that we do, I hand them out. I just say, hey, listen, if you're open to trying these, here, take these. Yeah. And they're always like, oh yeah, okay, all right, I'll try them. So
yeah. And you've seen improvements with your kids, right? I would love to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So when I sort of compare, my kids to their peers, my boys are in bed, asleep. I mean, Logan he'll be 21 next month.
Wow.
He doesn't live at college. He lives at home and he commutes. And that's a decision that he made. It was a twofold decision. First being that he knew that he would not be able to thrive in that environment.
In a dorm. Oh yeah. Living with someone else. Yeah.
He knew it. He knew. So, that was part of the decision. He's like, Mom, I'm in bed by 9:30. I'm up.
Oh yeah, that's not going to happen at college.
Right, right.
No way.
So, he knew that he would not be able to be at his best at school in that environment. Also, the financial side of it, the way that we presented our kids' college funds to them was, listen, we've saved every day of your life for you to go to college, and it's your money. What do you want to do with this money? And, you can go to a state school and tuition will be paid for, or you can make a decision, go to a fancier private school, in which case you'll have to incur a tremendous amount of debt. So it's your money. And basically we also said, like, the better you do in school, the more of that money you get to keep.
Right.
So, for Logan, for him to live at school, room and board is $15,000. So he's looking at that like that's $15,000 either he will pay to the school or he will get to keep. So I think the way that we sort of presented it to them changed the way they made those decisions. It wasn't like, oh, I want to go to, whatever. Logan got into some incredible schools, absolutely incredible schools.
Yeah.
And ultimately every part of that conversation was, well, how much is it going to cost me? Because it was, do you want to keep the money for yourself because it's your money? How do you want to spend it? How do you want to, allocate that money? So, I think that basically the way that we've raised them to just sort of think clearly, think critically about things by, I say this to everyone. I feel like when you are mindful and pay attention to the biology, that then sort of corrects the psychology.
Oh yeah.
That, when the mind is clear and things are functioning, it's a whole lot easier to make rational, sound, critical decisions without so much, emotion or things like that, interfering in those decisions.
Yep.
Also for Logan, I mean, he had taken the SATs and the ACTs, which are the college entrance exams, and did fine, did well, did well enough to get into most of the schools. And then I said to him, let's try something. I want you to do some things and then I'll have you retest. And so we started to employ, a little deeper into the quantum principles. And I had him eating a lot of wild caught salmon, which he enjoyed. So he had a lot of that. And I said to him, no video games, like none of that, ridiculousness, no video games for an entire month prior to this exam. And he said, he agreed. He said, okay, all right.
Well, that's good. He didn't push back too much.
Honestly, they don't.
That's good. That's really
not
good.
Not too much. Usually we can sort of, if there is pushback, we can negotiate a little. But typically, the famous saying in this house is it's non-negotiable. So
yeah, totally.
But so for the month prior to the exam, he ate a lot of salmon. He was up in the morning grounding with me every morning. Natural sunlight, lots of natural sunlight, no video games. Always, very mindful of the light environment at night. And so, blue blockers on, lights off, not on the computer. Yep. Both of their computers have iris. So,
Wonderful.
They have those.
Yep.
They have those on their computers. Both of their computers are set up by big banks of windows. So, typically I'm up there flipping windows, flipping light switches off and opening up windows.
Yeah.
And, so he sort of followed what I asked of him for a month prior to the exam, and he knocked it out of the park.
Wow.
He jumped like 3 full merit scholarship levels.
Wow.
Amazing. I mean,
that's really amazing.
He goes to UMass for almost no money, honestly.
Wow.
He could write a check himself and pay for it. So, if you like, from a parent standpoint, it's like, if you're looking for a return on investment, this is it. He's essentially, wow. It equates to, about $100,000 in tuition that he's getting, because, we sort of, made sure that we really sort of tightened things up for him prior to taking that test.
Yep. That's amazing. And I feel like that's just, we want, like we said in the very beginning of this conversation, I think a parent listening to this, they truly want the best for their children, and so this is the one thing that you and I both, I think we really want to spread more awareness about. That's why I brought you on the show, is just, this is the one thing that we're like, we'll just let the kids stay on screens, play video games, do this and this. But when you put it into those types of terms, I think for other parents of like, this is what's possible for your child when we optimize these things. They are making these choices because their dopamine is not totally shot out.
Right. It ultimately it makes parenting easier, because you don't have these or typically anyway, you don't see these behavioral issues, this impulsive behavior,
the impulsive,
reckless behavior,
easily influenced by the wrong people.
Right. Yeah.
Which I think is a lot of mothers, our fears that our child will be influenced by the wrong person and get involved in the wrong crowd. But if you nourish these healthy dopamine levels, naked outside barefoot,
yeah,
and limit the technology, you allow your kids to do, like you said, a little bit of gaming, a little bit of phone, but you limit it. There's mitigation at play. They're going to be, I think, less prone to a lot of the issues that I think people are most fearful of with their children. You can do all the nutrition, get rid of all the plastics, but this is the thing that I think a lot of parents are just missing. And so I think this is just such a great conversation. I'm going to share it with so many people. And you, like I said in the beginning, you coach parents, basically. You do quantum health coaching. Can you talk a little bit about that for anybody who maybe is interested in hiring you for some consultation or for some help?
So ultimately, when I'm working with someone, it often will lead to, well, my child is struggling with depression, my child is struggling with anxiety, and can this help them as well? And of course it can. We know that. So I've worked with a number of people, and helping them with their kids. It's heartbreaking to me. It's heartbreaking because these people that I know well, and who, they're wonderful parents, they're really wonderful, loving parents, and these kids are being brought up in really stable, loving families, and these kids are being checked into hospitals because and put on suicide watch. And so you it's not due to bad parenting or abuse or neglect or trauma. There's a big problem happening here, and it's absolutely heartbreaking. And just helping them, to educating them on what they need to do for their kids, and also talking to the kids and explaining to them, your brain is being hijacked. And as a parent, I don't negotiate with terrorists, basically, how I approach it. That's pretty much what it comes down to. And understanding, teaching the parent that their kids aren't able to think clearly, and their kids aren't able to behave in the way that you want them to behave, because they are being hijacked. Their brains aren't able to function clearly.
It's so true.
When you take action as a parent, which is what's required. I mean, you have to do the hard work as a parent. This is our job. When you take action, you can actually see your kid come back. And I will never, ever forget hearing Jack say that as parents, if we don't pay attention to what is happening, we will be changing our kids' diapers later in their lives. And that, to me, I thought, no, like I'm not going to allow my kid's brain to be turned to mush. I'm just not.
No,
and
not.
Whatever that takes. Like I said, it's not easy. I mean, I'm on duty. Every day. I'm on duty. Guys, make sure you have your glasses on. Make sure the your phone's down here on the counter, in airplane mode. I have the Faraday pouches. None of that is hard. It's not hard. It's not. It just requires consistency.
It does.
And I have explained to my boys that conviction and convenience do not live on the same street.
Nope.
And they thankfully they get it. They they understand and they see the difference in themselves compared to their friends. None of their friends are sleeping. They all have sleep difficulty. Lots of them have, emotional issues that they're struggling with. Lots of them have health issues that they're struggling with. My kids come home and they're like, Mom, everyone at school is sick. Everyone is sick. Everyone is gray and pale and sick.
Yep. It's so true.
In this house,
true.
every day at noon, I'm like, everyone outside. It's like a mass exodus. It's like all of a sudden it's solar noon, and we're like a herd. We just migrate, outside, and they know, they go outside, and it's to the point now, certainly as they're 17 and almost 21. I really don't have to say it anymore. They know it's good for them. They know what works for them, and they get outside with their shirts off in the sun for an hour or two in the middle of the day every day that they can. So
that's so wonderful.
Yeah.
And where can people find you if they want to work with you, if they do want to get some help, get some guidance here?
Yeah. I'm not super, I typically work, mostly one-on-one in my local community, but I can be contacted. I am working virtually with a few people. I'm working with one family, a woman in New York, and her son is on the spectrum. So we're, she's starting to understand the importance of this for him.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So I am on social media somewhat.
Okay.
So I actually, a number of years ago, I actually bought the Quantum Mom domain. So
I love it. I love it.
I don't even know why I did it. I was like, that feels right. So I did it. So I can, if anyone, wanted to reach me, they can find me on Instagram at the Quantum Mom. And I can answer any messages there if anyone has any questions.
Fantastic. Wonderful. I'll make sure to link all that in the show notes so people can find it. And thank you again for this conversation. I think it's hopefully going to reach a lot of moms, parents that, again, they want to do the right thing by their kids, but maybe they just haven't thought about this aspect. So hopefully we can bring it out into the light, so to speak.
Yeah, it's huge. Like I said, don't negotiate with terrorists.
Exactly. I love it. Well, thanks again, Kelly.
Thanks so much, Sarah. It was so great to speak with you, and good luck with
awesome.
the baby.
I
can't wait. I can't wait to see this next chapter for you, this journey.
Well, thank you.